I wasn't loud. I wasn't rude. I wasn't confrontational. I just asked questions, and apparently, that was enough for them to label me difficult. So, I stopped helping. Welcome to my story. If you've ever felt undervalued or misunderstood at work, this one's for you. At my old job there was this unspoken rule. Being agreeable was way more important than being accurate. If you just nodded along and said yes to everything, you were praised as easy to work with. But if you dared to ask for a clarification or pointed out a potential issue, you were suddenly slowing things down. Guess which one I was. On paper, my job description seemed straightforward. My responsibilities were clearly laid out, but the reality was completely different. My actual day-to-day job included a lot of unwritten tasks. I was the one fixing mistakes before they snowballed into disasters. I was the go-to person for questions that had nothing to do with my official role. And I was constantly covering for others, filling in the gaps when they missed important details. None of this was in my contract. It was never formally assigned to me. It was just expected. I was the unofficial safety net for the entire team, and for a while, I didn't mind. I thought I was being a good team player, contributing to the overall success of our projects. The turning point happened in a meeting. We were discussing a brand new process, and something didn't seem right to me. So, I raised my hand and asked a simple question. Does this new process align with our existing company policy? The room went completely silent. You could hear a pin drop. It felt like I had just committed some terrible crime. Later that day, my manager pulled me aside for a one. I thought maybe they'd have an answer to my question. Instead, they said, you came off as a bit difficult in there. Let that sink in. Not drone. Not inaccurate. Difficult. The feedback wasn't about the validity of my concern. It was about how my question made other people feel. My question didn't cause a problem. It simply made a potential problem visible. And in that workplace, visibility was inconvenient. It was easier to ignore potential issues and hope for the best than to actually address them head-on. My attempt to be proactive and prevent a future headache was perceived as me being a troublemaker. After that conversation, everything changed. The way my colleagues and my manager interacted with me took a nosedive. It was subtle at first, but impossible to ignore. I started noticing fewer follow-up questions directed at me. People who used to collaborate with me daily suddenly seemed to find other people to talk to. There was this quiet, professional distancing happening all around me. It was like I had been quietly exiled from the inner circle. But here's the funny part. The work didn't stop coming my way. The requests for help, for fixes, for my extra contributions, they kept rolling in. People still expected me to be their safety net, to clean up messes and answer their questions. They just wanted me to do it silently. They wanted the help, just without the pesky questions that came with it. They wanted the solution without having to acknowledge the problem in the first place. The final straw came one afternoon. A colleague frantically messaged me, asking for help with a major issue that had popped up. It was a direct result of a rushed decision made a few weeks prior, a decision I had questioned, by the way. Before I jumped in, I asked for some context to understand the full scope of the problem. His response, "Can you just help, instead of overthinking it?" That's when it clicked. That one sentence laid it all bare. Helping wasn't seen as a contribution anymore. It had become an obligation. My willingness to go the extra mile had been twisted into a silent expectation. They didn't value my expertise or my careful approach. They just wanted a quick fix, a janitor for their mistakes. My role wasn't to prevent fires. It was to put them out after everyone else had run away. So I made a decision. I didn't storm into my manager's office and quit. I didn't send a passive-aggressive email to the team. I just stopped. I stopped helping. I decided to do my job, and only my job, exactly as it was written in my job description. No more extra fixes for problems I didn't create. No more unofficial tech support for other departments. No more late-night rescues to save a project that was poorly planned from the start. If a task wasn't officially assigned to me through the proper channels, I didn't touch it. If a question fell outside my defined responsibilities, I politely redirected them to the correct person. I wasn't rude about it. I just set a boundary. My unofficial, unpaid, and unappreciated role as the team's problem solver was officially over. At first, nothing happened. It was quiet for a week or two. But then, the small things started to break. A tiny data error that I would have normally caught and fixed in 5 minutes made it all the way into a client report. Questions that used to get a quick answer from me now went unanswered for days, causing without my invisible safety net, errors started reaching the desks of senior leadership. Project deadlines started to slip. And here's the crucial part. None of this was because I was sabotaging anything. I was doing my job perfectly. The problems were happening because the person who used to prevent them had simply stopped. The system they had built, which relied on my free labor to function, was starting to show its cracks. Soon, the managers started asking questions in our team meetings. Questions like, why wasn't this caught earlier? And why didn't anyone flag this as a potential risk? The irony was almost painful. I sat there silently, thinking to myself, the person who used to do that was labeled difficult. Remember, the very thing they had criticized me for was the very thing they were now desperate for. They had discouraged the one behavior that was keeping their projects afloat. Eventually, my manager asked to talk again. This time, the tone was different. There was no accusation, just a sense of confusion. They started talking about vague concepts like collaboration and teamwork. They brought up the idea of going above and beyond as a key part of our company culture. It was a masterclass in corporate speak, carefully avoiding the real issue. I listened patiently until they were finished. Then, I looked them in the eye and asked one simple question. Which of those tasks you just mentioned are officially part of my role and responsibilities? Dead silence. There was no answer, because there couldn't be one. They knew that all the above and beyond work was just a way to get more out of me without paying for it or recognizing it. My question forced them to confront the reality that they were relying on me to do the work of 2 people. Things changed after that meeting. The requests I received became much clearer. Expectations were no longer vague. They were written down and assigned properly. When they needed extra work done, it was actually assigned as a task, not just dumped on my desk with the expectation that I'd figure it out. The dynamic shifted from unspoken obligation to professional transaction. I was never difficult. I was careful. I was diligent. And when being careful made other people uncomfortable, they tried to shame me into silence. But when I stopped covering for their carelessness, they suddenly realized how much I had been doing all along. They labeled me difficult. So I stopped helping. And in doing so, I didn't just get my time back, got their respect. Has anything like this ever happened to you? Let me know your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more content about navigating the tricky world of corporate culture. Thanks for watching.